Okay. Well, Shabbat Shalom. Shoftim. Well, what does Shoftim mean? Anybody? And then we'll pray. Oh, I know you guys know. Judges. It means judges.
It's like a plural of judge.
You're right. Yeah. Plural of judge. As in more than one.
Yes.
And which also gives, so if you think about that, and it lines out kind of a judicial system within the kingdom of Israel, or the house of Israel. But there's also another meaning for that word. Do you know what it would mean? It's related. How about that? As in, or so deliveries, or as it relates to a judge and a deliverer, or you can put the plural on it, deliverers, and it's all in this Torah portion. Well, now does that have not a messianic connection? All right, so maybe we can get into a little bit of that and connect some dots. So, okay, all right. So I was just checking that. We need to open in prayer. So, who has it? Daryl, would you mind opening us up in prayer, please? Okay.
Our great God, our Father, come before you humbly, asking you to watch over us this day. Put your angels about us and help us to learn and hear your word and apply them in our lives. We thank you for the food that you've provided for us. Bless the hands of the family. We also ask you to watch toward the people that are not here and can't come. And just be with us and bless this meeting. Bless the fellowship. We ask this prayer up in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Daryl. And as people are joining us online, one of the things that I want to remind everybody is next week, Eddie Chumney will be here. And so I'm really excited to have him back because Eddie has basically, over the years, given us his entire library here live at Life of Worship in one form or another, which is tremendous. Well, this coming week, he is bringing a complete study. Well, it's not going to be a complete study. We're going to get a tidbit of it. So he's breaking it down into 3 sessions. He said, I can do it in 2, but it's going to be like the Reader's Digest version. He says, it's better to do 3. And what's the topic? He is bringing out what he has studied out. He said he's read about 25 different texts and studies on the Dead Sea Scrolls, which relates to the Qumran community, which relates to the Essenes, and how that influenced the first century believers. In other words, what was it in the first century that they really believed, and what did they actually do? And what he told me, he said, this is going to be a game changer as much as when we moved from the understanding of where the kind of the old school thought is the one new man, which is the Messianic Jewish people and the Christians coming together as one. And that has become more clarified over the years with the 2 houses, the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom. And he said it is going to have that much of an impact when they switch to understanding there's a Northern Kingdom and a Southern Kingdom. And that Southern Kingdom is called Yehuda, Judah, and which basically was represented within 2 to 3 tribes. And the Northern Kingdom was represented in roughly 10, 11-ish tribes because Levi was between the 2. So, and how that Northern Kingdom went into exile, and they forgot their roots. They forgot who they were. They were dispersed among the nations. And if you watch the migratory patterns, you can see that a lot of those 10 northern tribes have ended up in the United States. Not United States, North America, United States and Canada. You can see that migration pattern, and it's very interesting, biblically speaking and prophetically speaking. Then if there's a bloodline root, doesn't mean that necessarily we have to have a bloodline root, but there is something, I believe, that's in our memory of our DNA that's caused those of us that are here today and those that are listening online, that is drawing us back to these biblical roots. And because there's a memory, they've proven that there's a memory. Did you? How do you know that there's a connection between our DNA and our ancestors in a memory form that's deep down and embedded within the code of our DNA? How do we know that? It's because they did some interesting studies with some monkeys that were on one island, and a monkey that learned a particular skill within that species on that island began to do this new thing, and it spread to all the other monkeys in that island. But here's the other thing that's very interesting. Monkeys in other islands that had no connection began doing the same thing as if it was innately put in within them. So what does that tell you about this quantum physics world that we're living in? That to the DNA level, there's a memory, there's an action, there's a reaction, and it spreads to others within the species. So don't you think that there's a connection within the DNA? Yeah.
When we think about it, the DNA it's a memory device, because it contains some instruction for the biological functions, and it would be nothing to have other layers to that, because they were talking about using it in some form of computing.
Yeah. Exactly. That's, in fact, this the whole technology behind those injections that they were doing in the last few years has been based on not necessarily more than just injecting a nanoparticle. And those nanoparticles have been in the injections of many injections over the years. That's why they want to fill our kids with up to 80 different types. But it's all about the altering. It's a modified RNA, not a messenger RNA, but a modified RNA by which they can inject a programming. That's why Microsoft was involved in the development of those things. All right, I digress. But so on the dark side of things, there's a delivery system. On the bright side of things, there's an inheritance here that awakens within us. And so we say, well, that's on a natural level, on a physical level, and it's on a spiritual level, and both work hand in hand. So this physical body is a temple of the Holy Spirit by which it does interrelate spiritually and physically. And so how does it relate physically? Because when we study these various laws or instructions, they have an impact within our body. So if we are wondering why our body breaks down and we deal with illnesses and sicknesses because of we live in a fallen world, those things can be restored within our body when we follow Torah. When we follow the instructions of life, then life returns to our body. So when we struggle with different things, from cancers to illnesses, from diabetes to arthritis to you name it, then our Messiah has given a delivery system to reverse the curse. That's what Deuteronomy 28 is all about. Is, okay, here's the blessings, here's the curses. You follow in these manners by which we followed in the manners of the curses, and then we wonder why we deal with these sicknesses and why would God put this on me? No, is because there was a departure from Torah, a departure from the ways of God, the instructions of God. So the return is the way to restore those things. Well, how does it get restored? Because when we're open to truth and we study the truth and we follow God's design, and even the different things we talk about, the truth about cancer is and the quest for the cure. We've been doing those. I know it's been randomly on Wednesday nights, but we've been going through that series. It's to go back and look at, well, what did God give us to restore and put back into our system a deliverer and a delivery system for health, from essential oils to foods, to sound waves, to heat, all these things that are normal and natural that God gives us to restore our bodies. There is nothing that cannot be restored. Now, but on the other hand, what does Hasatan want to do? He wants to give us delivery systems that will enhance the murder system, to kill, steal, and destroy. So if we are on pharmaceuticals, the pharmaceuticals give a hope for a way to deal with problems in our bodies, but they come with a lot of other side effects. There's not a cure. So we need to look for the cure. So it goes beyond just pigeonholing cancer, but it's health, entirety of health. What is the delivery system? So I think in this Torah portion, we can actually bring some things in terms of, well, yeah, we've got some legal matters here. We're talking about the establishment of a just legal system. And what is that about? And what is this definition of evil? What is evil? Because evil brings death and destruction, ultimately for the people in Israel. Because remember, originally who this book was written for? It was written for the second generation that was about to enter the land, but it was also written for everybody else that would follow in order how to keep the land. And so that which is evil, doing that which is evil, is that which is going to kick us out of the land. But can I put it on more of a microscopic element, maybe a nanoparticle element? Those things that we can do that will kick us out of this land. If our body is the temple, how do we lose the temple? Which is a piece of real estate, isn't it? So if our heart and our spirit this body is housing all of that, it's real estate. We'll lose this real estate when we do evil. Isn't it interesting to think of what was the word that was given over the temple, that was written over the temple? What was the name that was written over the temple? Was it during the time of Ezekiel, or was it Isaiah? The word is Ichabod. And what does Ichabod mean? So the glory of the Lord has departed. I believe. Do we want the glory of Yah to depart from our bodies? So therefore, this Torah portion then is going to relate to something. How do we properly judge? And exactly what is Shoftim as it relates to Mishpatim. So Shoftim, we get here. Mishpatim is righteous judgments. Judgment. How do we therefore bring this connection together? You've heard of Mishpatim, right? Or how about this word? Shaphat, which is related to you judging. Okay, so let's go to this Torah portion. This Torah portion begins in Deuteronomy 16:18 through 21:9. And let's look at something here. Deuteronomy 16. If someone would read 18 through 22 for us, please.
I will.
Okay.
You are to appoint judges and officers for all your gates in your cities. Yehovah, your Elohim, is giving you, tribe by tribe, and they are to judge the people with righteous judgment. You are not to distort justice or show favoritism. You are not to accept a bribe, for a gift blinds the eye of the wise and twists the words of even the upright. Justice, only justice, you may pursue, so that you will live and inherit the land Yehovah, your Elohim, is giving you. You are not to plant any sort of tree on a sacred hole beside the altar of Yehovah, your Elohim, that you will make for yourselves. Likewise, do not set up a standing stone. Yehovah, your Elohim, hates such things.
Okay, it's packed. It really is packed with all sorts of different things. I'm looking up a word just to confirm it real quick. 6682 in my Bible, 6682. Now it's talking about appointing judges, and who does the appointing of the judges? The people. And then, so it's talking about judges and officers in all your gates. So who are the officers? So
the thing I read is it's like the enforcers. It's almost like they're the police. So they make sure that the judgment gets carried out. The judge gives the sentence or the judgment or whatever, and they make sure that that gets carried out.
okay.
That's what I read. Is
All
that
right. Yeah. So it's the officers of the court. They administrate whatever the judge does. So in other words, you go to court, and it's a dispute of, let's say it's a dispute over debt, and you go to court, and the judge makes a judgment, and then the officers make sure that the person who owes the debt pays the debt, or vice versa. The person who says I'm owed a debt, and then it comes to find out doesn't owe the debt, to make sure he doesn't keep pursuing them and to protect the innocent. So that's very good. So the officers are like the police, whose duty is to carry out judgments. And by the way, this could also be because of a court case. It could be that, hey, in our community, we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So the officers are given the responsibility to make sure no one else is doing the same thing to somebody. So you don't have to keep bringing it to court. Then they can enforce the judgment that already comes down. On a individual level, how does that play out? Because we look at this, well, this has to do with ancient Israel, doesn't it? And what we would look for in terms of the kingdom when it's restored, correct? But how do we apply it then into our everyday life? How is it that we are both to be a judge and an officer within our own lives? Anybody?
First, you have to be following Torah before you can be judging.
So what I was going to say is you have to know the word so that you can release yourself to follow that word and not to do things out of it.
Okay. Which brings up a really interesting point there, because, and I think, and Rick, I think you're dead on. Torah has to be established, which means law and instruction. It has to be established, because are there emotions involved in Torah? Or is it as it is?
Probably depends on who you talk to. With me, I'd say yes.
Okay,
'Cause I'm
we
kinda
can
emotional.
we can be emotionally involved with Torah, but was Torah ever given to us through emotions? No. So, in other words, Torah is therefore can be and is righteous because it is an establishment of the truth which brings life. And therefore, truth is not subjective or relative to culture or to time or anything else. Truth is truth. It cannot be changed. It's always truth. And
Well, I know we're not there yet, but does it have to do with the two witnesses of heaven and earth? I mean, it has a witness, right?
yeah,
To validate it.
it is. It is definitely connected to that. And so therefore, when we're talking about judges, then judges cannot be a judge if they're subject to being biased. If we're biased towards the circumstances or the individual or monetary gain or influence or future promotions to higher positions, therefore, if we do what the establishment wants us to do, we can't be a judge. We have disqualified ourselves. But on the other hand, if we say, no, my judgments are based on what is established already, and nothing else is going to influence me, not my mama, not my best friend, not the one who gives me the paycheck. My judgments are based on that which is already established, which has been proven to be true and just, and it cannot be changed, and it is flawless. So therefore, this qualifies the person who is a judge. One who is not influenced by the very sad story of an individual can be a great judge. Because a person can come in with a really sad story, and that judge can be tied in emotionally and therefore make wrong judgments. Nothing but the facts.
That would be me.
Yeah,
I get emotional just watching TV.
I could not be a judge.
I know. So it's such a high position to be filled. And yet, what about our own individual lives? Do we say, but these circumstances arose, but that's my child, but that's my granddaughter, but you don't understand. I ran out of time on Friday, and so I went and did this thing on Saturday. But I had this influence, and they really, really needed my help. And the only day took me out of the congregation, which we're supposed to gather on. These different things. But if I do this, it might affect and have these effect. We have to say, Father, give me the heart of one who is not lawless. That won't be emotionally tied in. But here's the other thing about judges. Here's the key when we're walking and we're doing our best to live out Torah, living out the Father's instructions that He's given us, is to not be one who errs on the side of being merciless. Right? So each one of us has our own individual walk. And if someone is an errant in that walk and they're working through the circumstances and they're not where we are, we can't go around and be putting our standards on them because we've read a little bit further down the page, or we've had a little bit longer experience, or we've been able to work out those same difficulties ourselves. And so we don't want to stand in judgment. Otherwise, we're standing in the position that we don't need to be. What do you mean by that? Let's go to John 7:24. It says, do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. do not judge according to appearance.
Trying to look beneath the surface so you can judge correctly.
Look beneath the surface. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. You know, you can have a pretty disheveled person walk in front of the court. In fact, they even say that. If you're going to court and you're going to stand before the judge, clean up. If you're going to be in front of a jury, clean up. Because people disrespect one that even on the appearance side. But those people that are sitting on that jury, they need to be looking beyond the surface. What is the message? What's being told? Is this person truthful? Is the prosecuting attorney pushing something to lead someone to believe something different through their questioning of the witness? And this is why a defense attorney needs to be really good to combat some of that stuff, because a prosecuting attorney is trying to push a narrative to make that person on the witness stand or the one that is being charged look really bad in front of the jury. So we have to go beyond the surface and dig a little bit deeper. Okay, so what is Yeshua really saying? Slow down. Don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah. Anybody ever read through news articles and just make a judgment based on the headline and find out that what's in the story is different and sometimes even opposite what's on the headline? Yeah, I know we can't anymore. It used to be a time that we could say, well, that headline is probably going to be accurately reflecting the information that's in that article. We can't do that anymore. Yeah, well, the news.
I don't even watch it. So.
Remember CNN used to have that news show called Headline News? I used to watch it back when CNN was actually a little bit more accurate in terms of what they were. But I rarely listen to anything coming from any of the major networks anymore. Yeah. So to do not judge, the word is shafat. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge shafat with righteous judgment. Tzaddik mishpat. Let's go back to the Torah portion and look at an interesting word, because we tend to think that justice is related to proper judgment. But if you'll go back with me to Deuteronomy chapter 16, and Joy, would you read that verse again?
Which verse, sir?
Verse 20.
Justice, only justice, you must pursue, so that you will live and inherit the land of Yehovah your Elohim is giving you.
Okay, so that word, would you think that's related to this word that's related to Shoftim and Mishpatim and Shafat? Do you see the connection between the Sheen, the Pei, or the Thay, and the Tav? You can see the root in all of these words. I spelled that wrong. It should have been a PH. Okay, Shoftim. Okay. You see that root? Do we want in our English minds want to draw a correlation when we read, therefore, justice and only justice? Or specifically in the Hebrews, it's translated in English, justice, justice. It's written in there, only justice. That word is tzaddik. Now, what is tzaddik? What is that? Righteous.
That's justice?
That's justice. Tzaddik. Righteousness. Now, what is that pointing to then? If if we're talking about making right judgments, then, but it says righteousness, or right justice and only justice, righteousness and only righteousness you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land. Specifically, it's coming directly from, there's this discussion of judges, and it specifically is saying this goes beyond the judges, this goes to you. So that brings it to the personal level, and therefore this, we would have to say then, how would this relate to unrighteous versus righteous, or unrighteousness versus righteousness? What is righteousness?
Well, according to 1 John, righteousness is following the Torah and the instructions. Unrighteousness is lawlessness.
Yeah. Unrighteousness is the result of not following Torah. Righteousness is the result of following Torah. And so he's saying your land should be filled, therefore, or you, it should so fill you so that the land becomes so full of the instructions of God, the living word. Or you can hold on that thought. Or you can say, we can literally fulfill the callings of the royal priesthood, or the Melchizedek calling, who we follow Yeshua, the King of righteousness. Okay, so in other words, the kingdom can only become the kingdom if it's based on this one standard. And in that standard, you'll live. In that standard, there's life. In that standard, life is multiplied from the fruit of your labor to what grows out of the ground to your own family and the prolificness of your own family. It comes from this standard. Joy.
So there's a fellow that I talk to sometimes, and he is a big grace person. And he keeps saying that Yeshua is our righteousness, that we cannot be righteous. But I tend to disagree with that, because if you accept him, yes, he's our righteousness, he died on the cross. But righteousness to yourself would be to do what he says. Mm-hmm. Is that right? So, I guess he just keeps, well, he's the only righteousness. You can't be righteous, I guess, without him. This is confusing. I don't know. I have a question about righteousness. I don't know if it's us that can be righteous because we follow that, mm-hmm. or is it only because Yeshua died for us that we are righteous? Okay,
this is a really good point. So we can look at, let's go, and I know where the verse that he's pulling from, yeah. And it's from Ephesians. Hold that thought. Let me give you that definition. I put tzaddik. It's actually tzedek, which means the right, natural, moral, or legal right. It has to do with equity and prosperity. It's related to prosperity. In other words, it's directly related to fruitfulness. In our Western mindset, we think of prosperity as how much is in our bank account. So it's a masculine noun meaning a right relation to an ethical or legal standard. The Hebrew word occurs most often in the Psalms and Isaiah. The word is frequently connected with the term justice. Kings, judges, and other leaders were to execute their duties based on righteous standards. God himself acts in righteousness, both in judgment and deliverance. Furthermore, God can be credited for generating human righteousness. The concept of righteousness was so important to the Old Testament period that the community that housed the Dead Sea Scrolls called their most prominent leader the teacher of righteousness, a person whom many regard as the founder of the sect. So that's relating back to the Essenes. So the teacher of righteousness. Isn't that very interesting? It also, let me give you another thing that lends to this. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, it speaks, and the Essene community speaks about the sons of light and the sons of darkness. Well, in our Western mindset, we kind of have put the sons of darkness. We kind of categorize it kind of from a Christianity point of view. But the sons of darkness are anyone that fell outside of following Torah. If one does not follow Torah, they are a son of darkness. And the one who follows Torah is a son of the light. So we see how then it's very important for the teacher of righteousness then to know the instructions of God, because anything outside of those instructions is darkness, because it's not truth. It's going to lead people astray. It's going to bring confusion. And in this whole idea of grace, these very strong grace people, well, Yeshua is our righteousness. Well, he is our righteousness. Absolutely. But in Ephesians, they'll use Ephesians 2:8, saying, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves is the gift of God, not as a result of works, that no one should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua for good works, which Yah prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." Oftentimes, verse 10 is left out of their discussion. Okay? So, yes, we're his workmanship. Therefore, yes, Yeshua is our righteousness. Because why? We are being formed into his image. What is his image? Righteousness. Righteousness is defined only by following the instructions. Anything outside of following the instructions is therefore unrighteous or evil, or that which a son of darkness would do. So therefore, one would say, and where they miss it is where they're saying, yeah, but our salvation is a gift, not by what I do. Okay? So in other words, they're going to say, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It's the gift of God, not as a result of works, that no one should boast. In other words, well, if you follow all of the negative and the positive commands of Torah, you're putting your whole salvation based on what you do. Right?
That's exactly right.
Okay?
That's what they think.
But our salvation is not based on what we do. Our salvation is based on our response. So our righteousness is because we've been transformed. We've been made into the righteousness of Messiah, who is our proper judge, who's telling us, let's discern the difference between unrighteousness and righteousness. Let's discern those. Well, I'm going to lead you. I'm going to give you my voice. My spirit is upon you, and you are going to mature. To mean, you're going to mature. You're going to become more perfect in following out this lifestyle by what you do. And so therefore, it's not because we did anything in our own effort. It's because we submitted our lives to the lawmaker and judge. Well, that goes back to James. And of course, a lot of times they don't want to talk about James. But we can go to James, because James brings in this connection point between the following Torah and walking by faith. So James 4:12 says, there is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and to destroy. But who are you who judge your neighbor? So there's only one lawgiver and judge. There's only one law. There's only one who gives the Torah. Therefore, he does make the perfect judge for us. And that's who we're going to follow, because he's pointing us to the way of life. The whole reason we have a court system is because the process of life broke down and we need to make it right. So we go to someone who can understand these instructions that bring life and that which opposes life. And so they can rightly discern. They don't have to be emotionally involved to make that decision. They can rightly discern, just like Solomon. And when the two women brought the baby, well, it seemed like a difficult situation. And Solomon said, well, just cut the baby in half. Oh, the real mama says, just let her have it. Don't kill my baby. And the other one was heartless. So, all right, do it. So there is, emotions are involved in decisions, but there are no emotions involved in righteousness. It is or it isn't. And that's where I think people get caught up. And let's go back over here to Ephesians chapter 2. For by grace you've been saved through faith, that not of yourselves, it's the gift of God, not as a result of works, that no one should boast. Well, wasn't there a young man who approached Yeshua? And he said, what must I do to inherit the kingdom of God? And yes, well, you need, and he lists, was it about 4 or 5 negative commands and 1 positive command. And he said, all of these I've done since my youth. He said, well, then go sell everything you have and follow me. That was a big decision, because the issue is about this person who, and I think the greater picture is, it wasn't so much as this wealth that he had. There wasn't anything wrong with the wealth. It really comes back and points out, okay, how many times a day or in the course of the week do you feel like going and murdering somebody? It's like a no-brainer. I don't have any desire to kill anybody. Well, then it's an easy command to follow, not to kill somebody. A little less easy to not kill somebody with our tongue.
That's right. Yeah.
We got to watch that one, because it's what's in the heart. Yeshua points that out, of course. But what about not coveting your neighbor's wife? You're like, don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Okay. It's like, I'm not confronted with these things, so therefore I don't have to make that decision. And boy, that's easy to keep. And if your parents are dead, you don't really struggle with honoring your parents. And this guy had an inheritance that he was living on. So the chances are his parents were dead, at least his father was. So it's like, mom lives with me, so she's being honored, she's being taken care of. So what did Yeshua say? What's he saying? How many of these positive commands that have been given to us, or even out of the 10 commandments that we have, that we can say, pretty easy to do? People do struggle with the 4th one. To keep the Sabbath, make it set apart, make it holy. People do struggle with that one. Because look how many people are out there, and how many parking lots in churches all over this nation are empty today. All over the city. They're empty today. Tomorrow, they'll be partially full, because many have left the church. They don't know what they want anymore, because the church left them dry.
Right.
But that's my opinion. So this whole concept then is we know that term, judge not lest you be judged. How many times people will throw that in our face, because you're just saying I'm not living Torah the way I'm supposed to be living, or you say you follow Torah, but you don't do this and that, or, whatever. They'll throw it in our face. And then,
There's
but
about
what,
8 to 10 scriptures that talk about judging.
but the point is it not this word Zadok?
Yep.
If we don't properly judge according to righteousness, then we have no right to say anything.
You better know what you're doing when you say it.
And so it really comes down to then how much we don't know about this whole subject
Amen.
that we've got. And it's more than the knowledge of it. It is the inspiration that we get from it, because it's the inspiration through our daily experiences that we realize how it works, how it applies into our lives, as opposed to don't do this and do this. It's so easy to do the do nots, like the rich young ruler did. Yeah, Rick.
The LGBTQXYZ community and the liberals, they use that with a broad paddle against the Christian community. How come you say judge not, but you shall be judged? How come you don't love your brother and everything? They don't want to point out that it says that this is an abomination to God. He detested.
Mhm.
Says that in the Old Testament and the New Testament numerous times.
Mhm.
I think Christians there needs to be something like, okay, you can insult me, you can do these things, but when you start going against my God and going against what he says and doing things that he says he detests, then you've crossed the line. I no longer have to turn the other cheek. I can stand up for him and fight.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we're at right now, where we are this generation away from being Sodom and Gomorrah, because our parents and our grandparents did not stand up and say, well, we might say that we're supposed to love our neighbor and do this, but you can't be an abomination to my God and me not do anything about it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very interesting with that whole idea of, wasn't it Hasatan who said to Yeshua, "You're hungry, turn these stones into bread"? He used scripture. Isn't it interesting how communities like that will use scripture against the believers, but because they don't know this, they're always backing up. They're on their heels.
Well, and you could give them this too. I don't want you to die in your sin, because it is sin.
Mm-hmm. But they don't know. But if they don't know Torah, they don't know that it's sin.
Yes.
So the purpose then is to say, well, I think Ricky had a really good point. Then we have to have a standard somewhere. Our standards are not based on my emotions and my feelings about it. My standard is basically, what does the word say about it? And am I willing to follow that word or not? If I'm not willing to follow that word, then there's a consequence for living it out my own way. That's not my position. Now, in our communities, our community can have a standard and say, no, we're going to shut the door down to that community. If you want to go to practice that lifestyle and have your mount rallies and your marches and you shoving it in our kids' face and put your flags up in our schoolrooms and show that you're dominating us, then pack it up and go somewhere else. I think our community should do something like that.
Yeah.
And because any community that allows that and embraces it, it's set up for destruction. And honestly, we're set up in Amarillo,
We're
Texas
going
for
down the
that.
hole now.
Yeah, we're already set up. We think we're the most conservative county, Randall County, the most conservative county in the entire United States. And guess what?
It's here.
It's in every one of our public
Infiltrated,
schools.
yes.
Yep.
Look what
And
the enemy does. It goes in like a snake.
So, yeah. So, but going back to that other question then, in Ephesians, we know, therefore, where does it say that we are to do the works of righteousness? Or let's not get confused with the works of righteousness. Let's talk about the deeds. We are known by what we do. So they'll know us by our love, and they'll know us by what we do. Do our words line up with what we do?
Right.
Do we have this standard? Yeah, Daryl.
I believe it's Paul that told us dealing with the rest of the world, be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In other words, we have to understand the game plan of the enemy.
Yes.
We have to understand what he's using. I saw something in an email this week, and it was a work-related email, and from an adjuster that works for a major insurance company. And at the bottom, where they put, the name and their contact information, and below that, you know what that person put? His, or he, him.
Wow.
In other words, their company is making them identify their gender association on their emails.
That's some messed up stuff, man.
If you look, you'll see a he, she, and a she.
Joe Olsen was on the show.
I'm like speechless. Sorry.
They were asking him about this LBG deal.
Yeah.
He says, well, I just preach a positive message. I don't get it.
Because he didn't want to approach it.
He didn't want to take a
Right.
stand.
He might lose some people.
He did not want to take a stand for his God.
Which is his entire approach, because he's on a lot of media. It costs a lot of money, and he can't lose all those, because they've done the surveys. They know who's watching, and there's a lot of people that want a feel good message,
He's got it.
and they want to feel good about themselves, and they want to feel good about that they don't have to change their lifestyles or do anything that will cause them maybe a controversy, this cognitive dissonance in their own mind that might disturb them and might actually make a change within their heart.
Think.
Yeah, put a little bit of heat
We
on.
don't want the truth.
All the money. Isn't that true? So this, going back to this, so Joy, to your question that this person presents, it's like, well, what is the result of following Yeshua? If he's our righteousness, what's the result?
Sanity.
No, what is the result? We want to do the back in the 90s, it was very important. Excuse me, Rick. Back in the 90s, didn't they have the phrase, what would Yeshua do? What would Jesus do?
Uh-huh.
What would he do?
Turn over
He
and
would be doing the righteous
he's already been there.
and not kicking everybody out.
He would do the same thing that he did, and he would say he would do everything that he said to do.
But he said the truth and he said it.
And so what would we, if we're going to follow in his footsteps, then our lifestyle will reflect that heart change that we're really following him. Because it's a cognitive dissonance to say, now I can live a lifestyle that is contrary to the word. And by the way, that lifestyle is contrary to New Testament teachings. If they say they follow, well, we don't need the Old Testament, we have the New Testament, then the things that they're doing, that by saying I'm living by grace, which are, in other words, I'm taking advantage of the mercy of God by living this lifestyle, they're not even living up to according to the standards, saying that they believe that they should follow the teachings of Yeshua and Paul and Yaakov,
And you
James.
know who that's going to come down on? It's going to come down on the heads of the church. That's why some of these churches are closing and going down.
It's really
every
sad.
week. Yes.
And it's so this is the difference. And by the way, so righteousness. So therefore, the emphasis is on not judging. The emphasis is on righteousness. The foundation of Yah's throne is righteousness and mercy. So if his throne is righteousness and mercy, then we're able to make the right decisions. Because what is a judgment? A judgment is a decision. It is a decision that bears consequences based on how we live. Okay, so there's a connection to this theme that we're talking about in this Torah portion. Go with me over to chapter 18.
In what? Ephesians?
Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy. 18?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Deuteronomy chapter 18. And it's very interesting. I want to go back to 16 too, by the way. We're going to go back there as well because we didn't finish that one. This verse almost feels like it's inserted. And I'm talking about verse 13. Now, let's read 9 through 14. Someone read chapter 18, 9 through 14.
When you come into the land which Yah your Elohim is giving you, do not learn to do according to the abominations of the nations. Let no one be found among you who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices divination, or a user of magic, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For whoever does these things are abomination to Yah, and because of these abominations, your Elohim drives them out from before you. Be perfect before Yah, your Elohim. Was that it?
In verse 14.
For these nations whom you are possessing, do listen to those using magic and to diviners. But as for you, Yah, your Elohim has not appointed such for you.
Okay. All right. So what's this theme?
You walk in sin.
Just the surface theme that we just read in those verses.
Well, he doesn't want you to be conjuring up spirits, go to mediums, and in other words.
Yeah. Don't do what the pagans are doing.
Because it's in the dark.
Okay. Yeah. These pagans are doing stuff that it's not my way. In other words, it's unrighteous or it's evil. We can say making your sons and daughters pass through the fire. It doesn't mean those sons and daughters come out the other side.
Right.
They're dead in the hands of Moloch.
Witchcraft.
But then it says this interesting thing in the middle of this, you shall be blameless before Yahweh your Elohim. Blameless. What is that Hebrew word for blameless? Tamim. That word's translated as perfect, mature, wholeheartedly following. In other words, giving 99% means we're not mature yet. We want to be mature. Be ye holy as Yah is holy. We've read that over in the New Testament, which is quoting from here in Deuteronomy. But this I thought is very, very interesting because in this word, tamim, you have this letter, which is a tav. Guess what? It's an enlarged tav. So what is it telling us? Therefore, when we're talking about being mature, being perfect, in following after him, one, he's contrasting. This is the ultimate what's the right word? Ultimate, just horrible bottom end of the spectrum by doing witchcraft, doing spells, reading astrology, offering up your children for the god of convenience. Yeah. And so he said, that is the opposite of where I want you to be. But he enlarges the tav, which, Joy, I think your version captures that whole thought of wholeheartedly, because the enlarged tav means really not, it takes us beyond perfect. It takes us to being totally faithful. Completely faithful. It's saying there's a huge emphasis on living this way. If one says, well, Yeshua is my righteousness, so therefore I have the Jesus peace, I'm okay. No, you're not okay. Because when we study out what he's talking about, that to be perfect, even as he is perfect, he's saying, just when you think you've arrived, you've got more. Just because you've got the peace, you've settled. That's what they're like the rich young ruler. What did he say? Yeshua is really telling him and saying, oh, you think you've got all this? You really have just cut yourself short. You think you arrived. You haven't arrived. It's more than just saying, okay, you've got all these things. That's great. Go sell it. Let's really see where the value of life is. But if we really are looking at it as we've cut ourselves short. The church of Laodicea, let's look at it over in the book of Revelation.
I'd like to ask you, that he used that word detestable to Adonai.
Uh-huh.
Is that in the Hebrew, is there a stronger word than that? It seems like that is just something that.
That's a pretty strong word.
Yeah, talking about something that just basically makes him sick to his stomach.
Yeah, that's like, to me, is like totally unprocessed sewage. I mean, just the nastiest thing that just to be in the area of it makes me want to gag. Right? Okay, so the Church of Laodicea, or more technically, Laodicea, it reads, and to the angel or the messenger of the congregation, Laodicea, write, the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of Yah, says this, I know your deeds, that you're neither cold nor hot. I would that you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. In other words,
right quick, mine says something different. It's very.
Yeah, what should it say?
It says, I know your works and your labor and your endurance, and that you are not able to bear evil ones. So you've got to bear the evil ones too. And have tried those who say they are emissaries and are not, and have found them false. That's a strong.
Are you on Revelation 3:14?
2:2.
Oh.
14.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't give a reference, and that was my fault. Okay. I know your deeds. That's really strong, though. Strong language. I know your deeds, that you're neither hot nor cold. I would that you were cold or hot. So because you're lukewarm and neither hot or cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. In other words, I'm going to cut you off. What does it mean to be cut off from Israel?
You're not good outside the camp.
Yeah. I mean, this excommunication type of thing is a death sentence. Yeah.
If you wouldn't even frozen that, to be cut off from him.
Yes.
That would be hell.
Yeah. Yeah. The final judgment. Absolutely. Verse 17, because you say I am rich and have become wealthy and have need of nothing, and you do not know that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked, I advise you to buy from me gold refined by fire, that you may become rich, and white garments, that you may clothe yourselves, and that the shame of your nakedness may not be revealed, and the eye salve to anoint your eyes, that you may see. Okay, there's a lot going on there that he's talking about, but in other words, he's saying about them, I am rich and have become wealthy and have no in need of nothing. What he's saying is you have cut yourself short. You have so much more that you can prosper in, but you have put a cap on it. You stopped. So it's not that he's preaching against wealth. He's not giving a message against wealth. What he's saying is, you say you have wealth, and now you're wealthy, don't need anything, and you put a cap on it. You stop God from working in your life. And I'm like, wow, that's a pretty strong message right there. Because what that would be considered unrighteous. We put a cap on how far we can grow.
We get comfy.
Yeah. But he also said this, you cut yourself short because you even think you're well dressed and all of that. But I'm saying you need the white linen. Well, what does white linen represent though?
Purity.
It is that, but look in a bigger picture. It is the picture of the bride.
Yes.
You're not the bride. Wow. So we, each one of us, then therefore we're saying, so I'm not talking about someone that is maybe has a lot of money, or someone that doesn't, who says, well, I'm doing okay. I'm okay. I used to have a preacher that used to say, you just pray that you should have that. He goes, this is why I pray, that I have just enough income to take care of all my needs and a little bit to give away. No, you're just like the church of Laodicea. You're just like the rich young ruler. He said, well, I got enough. I'm doing pretty good. And he just capped himself because why? Because this enlarged Tav tells us we should never cap our ability to be fruitful and to multiply within our lives. If we just say, I got enough, it's not enough. You just capped yourself off.
Will you die unto righteousness? Because that's what all the disciples did but one.
And so
you can go on and on what he wants obedience.
So really it comes down to then how does someone really categorize their own wealth? Because the wealth should never be judged according to our own standards or the world standards or whatever, what type of car we drive or what type of house we live in, how much is in our bank account, if we got enough gold, to survive, or silver. Our whole issue, are those things important and are those things good? Yes, all of those can be used for good.
Yes.
But if we ever say, man, I'm doing great, I'm going to tell you, it can be taken away just like Job in an instant. And so what really makes our life full is related to this. Are we properly judging even our lifestyles, as if somehow we think that the blessed in America, because we have the blessing of God on this nation for so many years, has caused much prosperity, financially speaking, in this nation? Does that mean that we set a standard, but in reality, in overnight, it can be taken away? And what will people do? How will they live? Will they become like animals on the streets? Well, there's two creatures that were created on the sixth day, man and beast. We'll find who man is and who beast is when the rug's pulled out, when everything collapses.
There's some beasts out there now.
Yeah, Terry.
Would that also relate America to where it talks about in Luke 12:16-34? And he spake a parable unto them, saying, the ground that served rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow my fruits? And he said, this will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be, which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself is not rich toward God. And he said unto his disciples, therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what you shall eat, neither for the body, what you shall put on. The life is more than meat, and the body is more than raiment. Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, which neither have storehouse nor barn, and God feedeth them. How much more are ye better than the fowls? And which of you, with taking thought, can add to his structure 1 cubit? If ye be not able to do that which is least, why take ye thought for the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not, and yet I say unto you, that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothed the grass, which is today in the field, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? And see not ye what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, neither be ye of doubtful mind. For these things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added to you.
Yeah, really good.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. Just for the sake of time, it's a really good passage. And my first thought was, the dude missed the boat. He needed to set up an export business. Just saying. Okay.
That's
No.
what the U.S. has done.
Yeah, when you got abundance, then give it away. Send it out. Look what Russia's doing. They're sending grain at no charge to Africa. They're sending produce to Africa, which is a huge deal because of all this other stuff that's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine can't ship it out because they were misappropriating the good graces of everybody that set up the treaty to let them ship out their grain last year. So that it came to an end. So Russia's saying, well, we're not going to let the African nations go hungry. We're going to, and without charge, we're going to ship it to them. That's
unusual.
they have such an abundance. Have the abundance and to give it away says something.
Yeah.
All right. And so anyway,
It doesn't matter what Russia's doing, they're still being blessed.
yeah. So, and Russia, since the fall of the Soviet Union, they've had their problems. Yes, they had issues with their own Russian mafia and, corruption, and we have corruption in America. Come on. And, but they have in many ways have returned to the scriptures. Does it mean they're all like that? No, it doesn't mean like that. I mean, so many years of teaching atheism hasn't had an effect. But in many people were so hungry, the restoration of faith in that nation is huge, and they're being blessed by it.
Yep.
It has been a huge turnaround. So, but that's a whole nother subject. So, here's another interesting thing here from that original passage that we read is. So now righteousness you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. So this is life. Life comes from following Torah, because Yeshua is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by him. That way, the truth, and life is a Hebrew metaphor for Torah. So Yeshua is saying, I'm the Torah. If you read me, you'll find the way of life. If you read me and do, because Shema means to hear and to do, right? So if we hear and do, then we are going to have life. We're going to be able to possess it. We won't get kicked out of this body, that we were talking about earlier. But then look at this next verse. And this is in this passage talking about setting up judges and officers. You shall not plant for yourselves an Asherah of any kind of tree beside the altar, of Yahweh your Elohim, which you shall make for yourself. Neither shall you set up for yourself a sacred pillar, which Yahweh your Elohim hates. Okay. Well, how does that relate to Judges? And how does it relate, by the way, hold on to that thought. How does that relate to this stuff about witchcraft and passing your kids through the fire? That relates to how we can get kicked out of the land. First off, what is an Asherah? The first place that the tabernacle was set up in Israel when they returned to the land. Where was that set up? Does anybody know the name of that town? Shiloh. Yep. Shiloh. So it was set up first at Shiloh, and then it was moved during the time of David to where? To Jerusalem. Okay? Even to this day, around the Temple Mount, do you know there's something that is extraordinarily missing? Trees. Even when the architects would come in, they say, "Oh, isn't this right?" When someone puts a building in, or builds a house, what are sometimes builders do for the yard?
They sketch in trees and shrubs.
Put in trees and shrubs. So when someone moves in, they already have trees growing. Or they set up that building, they plant trees around that building. Well, it's real practical, isn't it, to have a tree? Shade and
Something to look at.
yeah, it makes it pretty.
And it also offers some protection from the tree.
Yeah, from sun.
What? But he says, you shall not plant for yourselves an Asherah of any kind of tree beside the altar of Yahweh your Elohim, which you shall make for yourselves.
Which one was that?
Why?
Pagan religions often use trees and things like that for their pagan sacrifices and worship and stuff.
Right?
When the kings of Israel, the upper and lower Israel, when they would change their lifestyle, one of the things they would do was cut down the groves.
Yeah, isn't that what Gideon did?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was an altar set up for Baal, and there was an Asherah. It was a tree and they can be groves planted around it, which is part of the worship. Because let's go over to Isaiah chapter 9. It says Adon, or the Lord. It says sends a message against Yaakov, and it falls on Israel and all the people. This is chapter 9, starting verse 8. Isaiah 9:8, and then verse 9 going on. And all the people know it. That is Ephraim and the inhabitants of Samaria, asserting in pride and in arrogance of heart, the bricks have fallen down, but we shall rebuild with smooth stones. The sycamores have been cut down, but we will replace them with cedars. What is it talking about?
That's Jonathan Cahn's book.
Yeah.
This is what they said at
Judgment.
Because sycamore tree replaced with a cedar tree. So is sycamore tree an evergreen?
No.
And it's replaced with an evergreen. Oh, therefore, Yahweh raises against them adversaries from Retzin and spurs their enemies on. The Arameans on the east and the Philistines on the west, and they devour Israel with gaping jaws. So,
because it says right above there that it's got to do with pride, because they say in pride pride in their areas of their hearts in 9 or 8. I don't know, I've got two little numbers there. Anyway, this was what they read in 9/11 after it was, I think it was President, one of them
After
stood there and
9/11.
said that. And
Yeah,
we are gonna rebuild, not,
the senator from North Carolina, forget what his name was.
it's very powerful.
Yeah. The senator from North Carolina, and there was one other person that said it. I don't think it was the president, but I think it was
Yeah, there were senators.
it was Senator Edwards from North Carolina. And there was one other person. The president did not say it. I was kind of looking for that, but Jonathan Kahn points it out in his book.
Well, he talks about a tree in New York that they planted and said, we will rebuild.
It was a sycamore that
Yes,
that
yes,
came down.
that was-
So, but the point is, what did they replace it with? A cedar. A cedar is an evergreen. Isn't it true that in pagan religions, so they like planting trees, but more so evergreens that are always green? Isn't that the very tree that many people put in their homes
You know how
at a
I think-
particular
Yes,
time of year?
Yes, they do.
So it is an Asherah, an
Actually,
evergreen. They don't put in a birch tree.
Yeah.
They don't cut down an oak and stick it in their home and put it up there, especially not that time of year. They'll put in a pine tree, of one sort or another, and an evergreen. And so therefore it's beautiful. The distraction that relates to these things, and as Joe pointed out, is oftentimes they would carve it out. They would carve certain things on it. Sometimes they would make it an Asherah pole. In other words, like a totem pole,
That's what I was trying to bring up.
right?
Yeah.
Where it's carved with all these images of gods. But and Joe pointed out here, she says, and they'd often sacrifice their children under this tree. But what else was done under the trees?
Fertility.
Fertility, acts of fertility with the temple prostitutes. Y'all didn't want anything set up like that, anything relating to it near his house, his altar, to defile it or to defile the people that were about ready to enter into that place. And
A lot of those evergreen trees, it takes fires for the seeds to be released.
yeah, isn't it true? Like the pine cones, the
Because
fire.
Those trees have some form of pine cone. And the only way you can get that pine cone to release the seed to be planted is through a fire.
And so they become groves. They become groves. Yeah. Now, then it also talks about these stones.
They just made their cut. He didn't want them cut.
So, yeah,
That's for-
yeah, you're right. That was a little bit, yeah, neither shall you set up a sacred pillar, which Yahweh your Elohim hates. So what is the pillar that he's talking about?
the whole- Probably like that obelisk thing.
Kind of like an obelisk.
Obelisk.
And there are some other stones that are at sacred places that have lasted. An evergreen tree, does anybody know how long a pine tree or some type of cedar will live?
Probably forever.
How many?
Hundreds.
They can live hundreds. Okay. So somebody might be able to look it up. You know, they'll live as long. A lot of times they die of disease and infestation, but they have typically a period of time that they live. Fire will, of course, destroy it. But a stone. What about Stonehenge? What is Stonehenge about? And what are these other hinges? They found hinges in America, North America, in the United States. They found hinges in other countries around the world. What are these stones? What were they used for?
I think pagan were.
Sometimes it'd be a circle of stone. Sometimes it's just one stone, like a tombstone. They're stones. How long do they last?
Forever.
Forever.
An evergreen.
How many churches do we see have a cemetery next to it to bring out a memorial of a particular person next to a sacred place? I'm not making a judgment one way or another. I just think it's very interesting that tombstones look like, you know what I say when hinges, you have a circle of stones. Oftentimes, or they may, like at Stonehenge, gateways. Gateways.
That's good, yes. The evergreens live anywhere from 50 to 450 years old.
4,700, the bristlecone pine or Methuselah pine.
So
It
this-
live up 4,700 years.
So those really, yeah. So, but they have a lifespan, and oftentimes are cut short because of forest fires, disease, those types of things. Don't set them up around.
They have a lot of them in England, their cemeteries by the churches, and they used to do that, they here in like the 17th century, the 18th century.
So when we audit our faith, could we actually say that these cemeteries are actually doing contrary to what the word says? Don't set this up next to a holy place.
Mhm.
Now we know that he's talking about here wherever you set up. You shall not plant for yourself asher of any kind of tree beside the altar of Yahweh your Elohim, which ye shall make for yourselves. Neither shall you set up for yourself a sacred pillar, which Yahweh your Elohim hates. What is it? Now we read over there in Isaiah, someone brought it up. Smooth stones. What is that? Why would it say smooth stones?
Because that's, those haven't been altered.
Yeah. So the altar is not to be made with stones hewn by hand. They're supposed to be organic, natural.
The tombstones by the churches was years ago when they had little communities. Nowadays you have mammoth cemeteries and
Mm-hmm.
cemeteries. And
Yeah.
everything. It's there's no church relationship.
Right. However, you would also think, well, it was convenient. You know, they have a memorial service inside and they go outside and then bury the person. It's convenient. But I just think, is there a relation there that besides convenience, is there something more that maybe they didn't even know what they were doing? But
Right.
when they erect that tombstone,
That probably didn't most of them.
is it kind of like a stone that's talked about here? Just a thought causes us to dig more. But we shall rebuild with smooth stones. The sycamores have been cut down, but we will replace them with cedars. In other words, the heart of the nation, when one is erecting these things, then it's showing the position of the heart. The position of the heart of one that says, I'm rich. I have more than enough. And I have no need of anything. I can bring an evergreen tree, grows really fast. It'll be beautiful even faster. I understand that the evergreen tree that they planted, that cedar tree they planted, I think it died. It became diseased and died. Someone can correct me on that, but I heard something that it didn't do very well once they brought it in there and planted it there in New York City. Okay.
Just shows you God's in control.
But guess what it says? Therefore, Yahweh raises against them adversaries from Retzin and spurs their enemies on. Now, talk about a gateway.
Yeah.
This is something that's being talked about on various podcasts and news discussions, and talking about the blood of the innocent. All right, so we talk about the blood of the innocent in several different ways. We know about the blood of the innocent through abortions. We know about the blood of the innocent that's happened to these children when they're being forced to have those those needles put in their arm and what it's doing to them. It's the blood of the innocent. It's about the blood of these children in Maui, for example. They were sent home from school where they were at home when the fire went through. They shut off the water. They did not turn off the electricity. So these power lines, and they weren't cutting back the brush. So the power lines from the strong winds were hitting the brush. They were catching on fire, being blown in, and at 70 miles an hour, right through this town where these innocent children were sent home to die.
And the
This-
people were not allowed to leave.
And they were cut off because one police officer, the one exit street away from it all, said, under orders, I'm not allowed to let you leave.
You know, chief of police in Maui, the same chief of police that was at Las Vegas.
Over during that handled the shootings in Las Vegas.
I wonder what kind of government conspiracy is behind all this.
So it's evil. It's sheer evil. But what is it? It's this blood of the innocent. Now, what is it that what is it that the demonic need to feed off of to be empowered?
Fear.
The blood of the innocent. The blood of the innocent empowers demonic activity. The people that are in charge, if they are under the control of these demonic entities, are empowered through the slaying of the innocent. So, wars that keep throwing troops into the mix. Big fires without the ability to protect those children. An industry that is built up in order to take life from the unborn. What's it do? It empowers the force of the demonic. And we were talking about, well, what are hinges? What are these? They're gateways.
Yes.
They open up the gateways. This whole thing in CERN, where they have this big thing of the god Shiva in front of it. Well, the goddess Shiva is, we think about the goddess of war, but it is also the goddess of mercy. So what do? They hold regular services of worship before that idol at CERN, because at CERN is to bring in the mercy of the underworld. Okay, it's really a messed up world.
Yeah.
It brings in, what they're doing is they're trying to bring in the energy.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what?
It's a false.
It's the blood of the Lamb that destroys
And
that
guess what?
frequency of greater is he that is.
in me than he that is in the world.
There we go.
Hallelujah.
So, but that doesn't apply if we're not Tamim. It doesn't apply. People under the grace model are not under the empowerment model.
So think of the havoc they're causing because of that.
Yeah. So we need to get under the empowerment model and destroy these hinges, these images of, because that's why don't put that demonic energy around the altar.
Right.
And so we don't want to put that demonic energy around this altar,
And it is an energy.
because this is land that's been set aside. Or if we do,
Yes.
then we come under the curse. We will be dispossessed.
Come on.
And we don't need to be dispossessed before the time that God's allotted for us, right? So we've got to come under his ways. And his ways is love.
Yeah.
And it's a frequency, by the way. 532, right? 532, 528.
28.
528. 528 frequency.
Yeah, that's what I said.
It's the frequency of love.
Yes.
It's been scientifically proven that it brings healing and restoration. But if we keep, I think in our when we showed that video on Wednesday about the frequency of fluoride,
Don't
We're-
use it.
it- and the frequency of iodine,
Laugh.
the frequency of iodine is like, it's like rejuvenating. It's so harmonizes with our body. That's why when you take iodine, it has this oxygenation effect within your body and it wakes you up. It goes in, and that oxygenation goes in and destroys cancer in the body.
Yes.
Well, it has a frequency, and when we hear that frequency, it does the same thing. Well, when you have fluoride, the frequency of fluoride, I don't know what frequency it is, but it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. And when people brush their teeth with a fluoride toothpaste, or they're drinking fluorinated water, what's it doing to our body? We're living in this harmony. We got the love of God on us because we're to love him and we're love our neighbor. And this love thing, it causes a frequency that we really harmonize with. And then we drink this fluoride and cause going on. I mean, it's horrible, huh? It causes chaos. It destroys, it kills, steals, and destroys, which is the opposite of what Yeshua said. The enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but I came that you might have life and that more abundantly. And isn't that what we're talking about today?
Yes.
Life. Life and that more abundantly.
Do you remember, well, back when, I'm not, it's been a few years. But when we used to sit in science class and they'd come up with all these numbers, well, there's something to that. I mean, there are frequencies, there are, science was beyond me, but it's like chemicals and things that are in our atmosphere. It's mind-boggling. So, yeah.
Psalm 89:14 says, righteousness, tzaddik, and judgment, mishpat, are the foundation of your throne. Mercy and truth go before your face. Whew, that's a good one. Deuteronomy 17:11, according to the terms of the Torah in which they instruct you, according to the judgment, mishpatim, which they tell you, you shall do. You shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left from the sentence which they pronounce upon you. Break the curse.
Yes.
Get out of the curse, which comes to kill, steal, and destroy. The whole point is choose which day you shall serve. Choose you this day who you shall serve. Which day? This day. As for me and my house, we shall serve Yahweh.
Amen.
Deuteronomy 16:20, justice and only justice you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. Let's see. Matthew 6:33, but seek first the kingdom of Yah and his righteousness, tzaddik, and all these things shall be added to you. And of all different things, there's a connection to Genesis 14:18, when Abraham brought a portion of the spoil, when Melchizedek met him. The king of Salem came out and met him in the field. And it says, then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of El Most High, king of righteousness. So think about that. There's a connection, therefore, with righteousness and the bread and the wine. And Yeshua is the bread and the wine.
Hey.
And that's why at Passover, we have the 5 cups. That's why we break the bread on every Erev Shabbat, to bring out the wine and to bring out the bread is to remind us this is the path of righteousness, Yeshua.
This is the clean stuff.
This
not the chemicals.
is what came from the fruit of the earth, that he's connected us. He grounded us to that. Those at garden understand you're grounded when you're out there working that garden. And you're preserving that garden, and you're protecting that garden from the pestilence and the disease, and you're keeping it watered, and you're fertilizing it, and you're causing the abundance to grow. You've connected with a part of our original design to be fruitful and multiply, to cause this to cause us to understand not only just what the sweat of the brow is all about that Adam came from, but when we're like, if you if you sing the Shema over it, if you're bringing forth the presence of God into your garden, guess what happens to your garden?
Ooh, fruitful.
Yeah, if you're cursing your garden every single day when you go out there and say, man, this is just a pain in the rear to take care of it, all this, blah, blah, blah. You're speaking curses over it, destroying what God has given us stewardship over. We don't do that. We don't curse our job.
Bless your
Well, some
garden.
people do. They curse their boss. They curse the work they have to do. And it's the very thing that's causing money to go into their bank account. How dare we? If you don't, it's not a fix, then fix it. Fix it. Do something about it. And so a lot of times it has to do with this, the heart. Because all of these things have to do with the heart. Even as Joy was talking about, the issue of the heart of grace. The heart of grace is missing the boat. Because it wants to take the easy way. And did anybody ever say? Well, let me put it this way. The problem that we have, and this is why we come up with the excuse of grace, is because it's so against our culture. Because what we're talking about here is a shift of lifestyle. And when we shift the lifestyle, guess what happens? It just becomes part of our life. And the part of our life is now, is it hard to do what's part of your life? It's part of our life. Was it hard at first? It was hard at first because we had to break paradigms. We had cognitive dissonance. We had two complete different thoughts occupying the same space, and it just hurt. But when we break it and we embrace the way of Yah, then that other stuff seems so foreign. I don't want to hold that in my mind any longer.
Right.
I've rejected it. It's alien. It's foreign to me. Terry.
We were ingrained in chaos. Most of us were created in chaos and trained up in chaos. And so when we come into the Torah, that's where the rub is.
Yeah.
Because we know the chaos. We don't know the peace. We want to know the peace.
But the chaos feels good
Yes,
because we don't know anything different.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, I think I'm going to go ahead and bring it to a close. We're done. All right. Well, thank you, everybody that's joined us. It's good to see. And I guess we can see Rexana showed up in there. And of course, I didn't mention Joe. I mentioned Bob earlier. Joe, it's good to see you. Thank you for your kind words in there, Joe. I appreciate that. I did see that. And so we'll be back at 3. Join us for praise and worship. And also a message for today. We're going to continue, by the way, in this Torah portion. Oh, I've got some things to talk about that's still in this Torah portion that you don't want to miss. So we'll see you next time. We'll see you on the other side.